So let's just pick it up where we left off, Scott. So you've met Paul Stacy. You're in his
Yes.
home full of amps.
Yeah, full of amps. And it was just, we kind of hit it off um, sort of straight away, really. But, sort of chatting about guitars and music. And he was producing Tal Wickenfield's album at the time. And he played, I heard a few tracks of that. And I was sort of blown away. And he'd produced it and mixed it and stuff. And yeah.
Because was that with Owen Barry? Was that?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if Owen's on the album or not, but he plays with her.
Right.
I think Blake Mills might be. Well, he's on some of the. I don't really know, but I know Blake was on one of the tracks, and Jeremy was on drums. And I'd heard other things they produced and worked on, so I was a fan. And I'd kind of always wanted to do something, I hadn't made any music by that point for probably like 8 or 9 years. I hadn't really done anything of my own sort of thing. And, I just kind of got back into that mindset of like, I wonder what I could do, how I could do it with Paul. And it took a long time to come to sort of fruition, really, because Paul, he doesn't like doing things by halves. So, it had to be in the right studio, the right time, with the right musicians. And anyway, so we became friends and we did some gigs together. And he's an amazing guitarist as well, Paul. He can play anything from like George Benson's sort of stuff to Alan Holdsworth to like British rock. Him and Jeremy, they kind of sit in this weird, like, amazing little musical space where they're jazzes, but they also are into British rock, like the Beatles and the Stones and stuff. And there's not many people that are into those two things and two worlds collide. So they've got all that knowledge and harmonic knowledge and jazz mentality, but they can also play like kind of, the Stones. And, Paul did stuff with the Black Crowes, and Jeremy with Sheryl Crow, and they've got a big sort of history of artists they've worked with. But yeah, so we would hang out and we did a few gigs. I did this night called the Super Jam, which was just like loads of musicians that I was friends with a friend of mine called Gavin Condor singing, who I also do a band with called Rufus Black. And Gav's an amazing singer, sort of in the Paul Rodgers kind of way. And I'd sort of lost, I wasn't sort of singing as much. So to find someone like Gav was like finding, it was just a really good connection. So leave the singing part to him rather than me worrying about it. But anyway, and then the kind of catalyst for the album, I'm rambling on here, but I did, and sort of name dropping a bit here, but I did a gig with Paul Jones. It was like a charity evening, and Eric Clapton was playing as well. And I ended up playing with Eric, kind of like he did 3 of his songs, or 3 songs, and we were like the house band. And being such a big Clapton fan, and I've seen him quite a few times, I kind of knew the songs pretty well already. It was like Before You Accuse Me, I think Little Queen of Spades, and another shuffle, Sweet Home Chicago or something. And they'd sort of said when we did the rehearsals and stuff, they were like, Eric's going to play, but he'll probably just want to play with the drummer and the bass player, like do it as a 3-piece. So when I turned up at the gig, I could see Eric's amp there and his tech and everything. I was like, oh, fuck it out. He's like, yeah. I was like, so he's coming then? And they're like, yeah, Eric will be here in about 10 minutes. I was like, when I got my amp out the car, and I was like, where should I go? And the only place to go was next to him. He was like the bass player's side,
right?
Stage left. Mm-hmm. And so I started setting up my amp, and I was like, I wanted to get set up before he arrived. And I think everyone had sort of disappeared up to catering and went to get some food. And anyway, so it was when Eric arrived, I was the only person on the stage. So he sort of walked in and he's like, all right. I was like, yeah, all right. How you doing? And he's sort of like, where's the dressing rooms? And I was like, oh, they're sort of over that way. And I was kind of like, I had my guitar in my hand, so I was kind of like noodling away. And he came back, and we were sort of sound check. By that point, we were sound checking our, the house band stuff. And he was just sort of stood there watching, kind of my side, which was the side that the monitor desk was on and stuff. So it was just to my left there, and he's literally like 2 meters from me. And I'm going, oh my god, it's Eric Clapton, like, trying to play it cool. I don't normally get like starstruck or anything like that, but it's Eric Clapton, and he's watching you play.
I mean, come on, Eric Clapton he's the number one, right?
In the world. I mean, he's a legend. He's played with everyone. He's, anyway, so there was a bit of a break, and I just went over and I said that I knew Doyle Bramall, and he was like, oh, cool. And, we got chatting, and that was that. And I was kind of made up with that. Anyway, so he got up to sound check with us, and his mic kept feeding back. So he'd go to sing a verse and it would feed back. So it happened a couple of times. He was getting a bit pissed off with it. But rather than stop the song, I think he sort of thought, well, let's all have a play. So he sort of looked over at me in the sound check, and he was like, sort of nodded. And so I had a little solo on the slow blues or something. And, that moment has... that moment, I've seen Doyle play with Clapton before, and that moment on the slow blues where it's you sort of dream of those kind of moments of like, what would I play? What am I going to play? So it sort of happened in the sound check, and I didn't go for it because I didn't want to be disrespectful, and it wasn't it wasn't the time to start sort of whittling and showing off. So I just kind of played a bit, and he seemed into it, and he carried on with the song, and sound check finished. And I thought, well, that's probably it, because come the time for the gig, he'll probably just do it with the backing band, and he's not going to want another guitarist on the stage and stuff. So, but I was made up. I was like, I've played with Clapton, I can die happy. That's it.
We've done it.
And then anyway, fast forward to the gig, and there'd been no sort of mention of what he wanted to do, whether he wanted to change anything, whatever. So I think he was the first act of the second set. Coincidentally, Tom Jones was doing a few songs as well, and Van Morrison. So I was buzzing from playing with Clapton, but then I had to remember the other songs. Like, I was like, oh, I've got to remember.
But at that point, Tom was your boss anyway, wasn't he?
Yeah, so I already knew Tom, and Tom was there with his son and his manager Mark. And so I was kind of, it sort of helped in a way, because I knew I was comfortable with that music. I knew Tom, and he was really friendly and stuff. And then, so we did the first set, which I think finished with Tom. Van Morrison did his bit where he sort of didn't say much, and he was like, play the fucking song, and he just sort of played it, and it was like... And then we started the next set and with Clapton, and we were all playing with him, and we're like, fucking hell. So sort of, you've got that thought in your back of your head the whole time of like, what if he looks at you for a solo? What am I going to do? And I'd made sure I'd actually taken 2 amps that night, because I thought, well, if I do get a solo, I've had it before where like an amp's broken. So I was like, well, at least I'll have a backup. And then I was like, if I do get a solo, I want to be heard, because I've also had nightmares where it's like you go to do a solo with someone and you can't hear your guitar. So I was like, I'm going to make sure I can be heard. And the first song, I can't remember what song, it was like a sort of mid-tempo kind of thing. And he looked around at me and he kind of went,
Did you let rip, or were you respectful?
I was kind of like too shocked to think. So I just started playing, and then it got to the end of the 12 bars. And then I sort of looked over, because I'm thinking, well, he's not going to want me to do more than, I was trying to be very respectful, because I've seen videos of...
You're a humble guy.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You're a humble guy.
Well, and I've seen videos of people where they're playing with someone like Eric, and they just go mental. Yeah. And you sort of think, well, that's just disrespectful. It's not...
It was like, when Gary Moore, bless him, when he used to get like B.B. King to his gigs, and he used to just... go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, bless him. He didn't mean it, but you know what I mean.
It's only like a couple of songs. Just let them,
Yeah.
So I wasn't thinking about it in terms of showing off. I was more just like, how can I play with, anyway, so I sort of did the first 12 bars, and then he sort of smiled, and he was kind of like, and again. I was like, bloody hell. So I kind of went for it again, and then the next song happened. I think after the first song, I think he sort of said something like, great band, yeah, great band. Then he got to the next song, which I think was the Slow Blues. And I was going, fuck me. It's because, you know, it's a long song. It's like 10 minutes. So it's like 6 minutes before the guitar solo, you know. And it kind of got to that point, and I'm thinking, well, this is where I've heard, you know, Doyle normally does a solo before Clapton, before the key change. And I'm thinking it's coming. Probably going to not, you know, it's fine. Just let it happen. And then he sort of looked around and goes, I was like, oh, fucking hell. Here we go. So I couldn't help but
you got to do it. You got to do a good job, haven't you?
Yeah. No. And I was sort of playing there, and it, you know, and it's perfect. It was the perfect moment for me because it was the band sounded great. Clapton's giving you the go ahead, and then it was also quite mellow as well the first time round. You know, sometimes it's hard to play a solo when you only get a quick moment and everything's loud, but it was like there was loads of space, and you know, I could hear. But so I sort of was trying to take it really, you know, take your time, breathe, you know, and I was trying to kind of, you know, I've heard Doyle play with Clapton a lot, and Jimmy Vaughan, you know, I had a bootleg of Jimmy Vaughan playing with him at the Albert Hall, so I kind of had that in my head. And I started playing, and then all I could think was, because Clapton's amp was right next to me, it's like, oh my god, Eric Clapton's playing rhythm guitar for me. So I'm hearing him doing this, he's sort of like doing a sort of like ding, ding, you know, and I was like, I've heard him do that so many times, and then so I just had to shut my eyes and go for it, and I kind of almost fluffed a couple of things because I don't know, the adrenaline and the buzz of it.
Yeah. You don't want to be aware of the reality of what's going on, do you? You need to.
Yeah, and there was one little moment where I kind of had that as I was playing a lick, and I thought, oh my god, don't fuck it up, and you know, and I think it was fine, and he was cool, and that kind of happened. Then we did another song, and a similar thing happened, and we came off the stage. And also Tom Jones was watching. He was right there with Mark, his son, and they were kind of egging me on.
Really?
You know, like I sort of played a lick, and I sort of heard Mark or someone go, you know, woo, or something like that, and I was like, this is a weird, brilliant moment. I just don't want to forget. And I came off stage, and Clapton was kind of shaking hands with a few people, and stuff, and I just shook his hand and said, oh, thank you so much. That's made my life, basically. You know,
amazing. Yeah, that's incredible.
His wife came over, and she was really nice and really complimentary, and she was like, you've got it, or something. I was like, fuck it, I don't know. I was like, I've got to go outside for some fresh air before I faint. And it was just a really nice moment. But sorry, I'm going into loads of detail.
Fantastic.
Because point,
can I just say, I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw Paul Jones, I think, posted something on Facebook, and I saw that you'd played with Clapton, and it's great to hear the backstory of, you know, what actually happened. You know, so thanks.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, yeah, it was a real highlight, and you know, it was great because I'd kind of having the Tom connection and him being there, and also I sort of, by that point I'd met Doyle a few times, and kind of we've become friends. So kind of having Doyle as a being able to, as a mutual friend sort of thing was really cool. And you know, I look up to those people a lot. So to have someone like Doyle that you could sort of say, oh, I know him, and that, I think that kind of helped with Eric kind of going, oh, he must be all right, sort of thing, you know.
I think that, you know, he can tell, like, because in the rehearsal or whatever, you're quite a humble player. You know, you've got that sort of sense of, you got that. And then some guitar players, they don't have that, do they? They're just like balls to the wall. You know, this is my opportunity. I'm going to make this count, you know, because this might be the only one I ever get.
Yeah, I think I used to be more like that, but definitely from doing the session thing a bit and seeing people like Robbie and stuff, you just sort of think, well, that's not really, you know, you've got your one moment to shine for sure, but you don't need to be a dick about it. You don't need to, like, you know, take away from anyone else when you do your thing, you know, just let it speak for itself. But it was very, very cool. And you know, obviously I was like made up, you know, I was on cloud nine for a while after that. And I got a text message about a month later. Doyle sent me a message, and I was thinking, oh God, I hope I haven't pissed him off, because I was sort of thinking I probably copped a bit of his intro to the slow blues, you know, because I've heard him do that so many times, and it's always a highlight of the show when Doyle kind of gets a moment on the blues, on the slow blues. So I was a bit worried. He was like, "Hey man, sup?" And I was like, "Yeah, good, thanks." And he was like, "Yeah, I just had dinner with Eric and his wife." I was like, "Okay, cool." He said, "Yeah, they said that they had this great guitarist the other day that reminded them of him and Stevie Ray Vaughan."
Oh wow!
And I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty cool." So that was great. And what
amazing.
The reason for doing the album, you know, there's a few reasons, but one of the main ones was I came away from that gig thinking, what have I got that represents me that's out there, you know, musically, like an album or, my own music. And I was sort of looking online, and I was kind of embarrassed because I didn't really have anything that represented where I was at, or, you know, from what I'd done since, you know, probably 6 or 7 years before.
So before this new album, was it just 2 albums you had, or did you have
2 albums? Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Can't Take No More in Trouble. I've struggled to live with, because it just doesn't. Although it's not bad and there's some good moments, it's not. I don't think I was quite being me. I was trying to be something else there. Can't Take No More, I think, is a bit more of an honest, you know, bluesy kind of album. But yeah, I mean, these are all quite old. You know, I mean, Trouble came out in 2009, 2010 or something, and Can't Say No More in 2006. So I was really sort of thinking, and maybe it was a bit sort of self-obsessed, but I was thinking, if Eric was, you know, he's sort of like a lot of people, he probably goes on YouTube and
Spotify
and stuff. And I was
a big Spotify user. Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, well, like a lot of us are, I think. It's where you find out things. So I thought, fucking hell, I haven't got anything on there that is recent or represents where I'm at now musically. So I was chatting to Paul about it, Paul being a good friend, and, you know, him being a producer as well. He was like, well, let's do an album. Let's do something that's got all of your influences in, that's live, that captures, because I think playing wise, I'm better when it's in a sort of a live situation, when you've got chance to go off on one and you're reacting to.
I was going to say this. Because if we just start talking about, I don't want to jump forward here, the gun, but like, for example, on your first track, New Morning, when you're doing the solo, you know, you're playing, this is what another sort of Hendrix sort of vibe, more than a Steve Ray Vaughan vibe, whereas Chris Layton and Tommy Shannon pretty much stuck to one kind of groove, didn't they? They didn't go too crazy, whereas Mitch Mitchell was really taken off with Hendrix, going with Hendrix. And that first track, New Morning, really has that, where the drummer's kind of, he's not just playing a simple beat all the way through. You know, there's kind of reacting to what you're doing on the guitar, and vice versa. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. I think that track might be Fight No More, I think.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I've got number. Where's my? Yes, you're right. Fight No More. Yeah.
Yeah, which is it's quite a Mitch Mitchell-y. It's almost like I was saying about Jeremy and Paul. Jeremy being the drummer, like Mitch Mitchell was in, like, he was a jazz drummer, really, like playing like Elvin Jones, and that's what Jeremy's got, that jazz element to his playing as well as the rock thing. So for me, having that someone on drums who's pushing you really turns me on musically, because we were talking about rhythmical stuff earlier, and, you know, I play a bit of drums. I'm not like amazing, but like I that pocket and that groove and being able to play with that really excites me as a musician. So to be in a room with someone like Jeremy and he's going off, but also he's listening to what you're doing. So I'll play a lick and he'll react to it, and you react to that lick, and it's like sort of changing gear. It's like he keeps going up gears, different gears, and you're kind of like pushing him and he's pushing you, and you're kind of just sort of egging each other on. And I haven't had an experience like that with the drummer before. The first time I had that with him, we did a live gig, and a gig. And I've released it. It's called the Super Jam, and there's a track on there called Repo Man, which is a Ray LaMontagne song that we did like a sort of funky, hate the word funky, but yeah, a funkier version of. And in the solo on that, I don't remember much about it on the night, because I think when you're in the moment, you kind of do a gig and you have a great gig, and you come out of it and it's a bit of a blur. You can't totally remember what you did, but all I remember feeling was like this energy from the whole band, but particularly from Jeremy on the drums, of him like pushing you. It was like you're falling backwards and someone's like pushing you forward to play something that you haven't played before, just going off.
And the bass player as well it's a really nice little bass, drum, and bass sort of.
Yeah, that's Rob Malarkey, who's an amazing bass player. He's on the live thing, the Super Jam gig, and yeah, Rob's like a monster musician. And again, I mean, I say it's Jeremy pushing you, but like what Rob's doing as well, he's putting in all these like extra things, and there's this sort of moment where he kind of does this sort of, I think you call it like chromatic kind of like going up, and then push it, and then I sort of ended up doing something similar, and it was just this amazing moment of for me anyway, that feeling of being spontaneity. Yeah. And me and Paul, with him as producer, I think he wanted to capture that, and he's a bit, he doesn't mince his words, Paul, and he didn't want to do an album that was just another sort of generic, sort of half-assed blues rock album where we all play separately, punch in for a solo, perfect it, copy and paste, fix it in the mix sort of thing, and then put it out. Paul's way of working is like old school. He's about getting the right sounds in the room, and he knows
sort of an authenticity, sort of an authentic.
Yeah. So he's a great engineer as well as producer, and we recorded it at Rack, which is Rack Studio 3, which is it's kind of a bit like Abbey Road in its heritage. Mickey Most, it was his studio, and he was a famous producer in the 70s and 80s, did a lot of stuff. So the studio kind of has this heritage. It's not like a bedroom record. It's like, we went in for 4 or 5 days, set up on the first day, and we didn't really have any material as well. So
I was going to ask about that, because was there a songwriting period where you thought, okay, I've got these little riffs or these songs?
Yeah, there was. I mean, more just like as I was kind of doing it. So I kind of had a few ideas, and a couple of them were sort of like I'd play along to a drum loop or record something, but a lot of it was pretty embarrassingly unwritten before we went in. We just kind of made it up. So I'd be like, oh, Jeremy, just what about, he had 2 drum kits set up, one in each corner of the room, and there was like a big open Bonham Mitch Mitchell sounding kit that was all mic'd up, and then there was a little funky kit in the corner that was kind of tight and a bit more boxy kind of sounding. So he'd just kind of sit and play a groove, or do something. And for me, I'm always able to react to something if the groove's cool. If the drums are feeling and sounding great, I can normally just come up with something fairly spontaneously, like, if you know what I mean. So a lot of the time we just kind of have a quick chat about, oh, why don't we do something in this vein with this sort of sound, and play it through maybe once, get an A and a B section, and then jam it. I mean, some of these songs we had to cut down, so although we haven't edited any of the playing, the actual songs have maybe sort of like, well, let's take out that middle bit where we were pissing about for half an hour and just tag on the ending and whatever. So it was a really free experience, and to be able to do, you know, both of my albums before were never done in that. Like I said, the first album was done at home very cheaply, sent the files to Jess, he mixed it. The second album was done in a studio, but I mixed it all myself, and it wasn't done in that same way. Whereas this is much more, you know, when you read about those kind of old Hendrix sessions and Zeppelin things where they, and Miles Davis as well, where they'd like go in and jam and have fun and experiment with sounds and things. It was much more, it had that kind of feeling about it, and having the heritage of someone like Paul behind the desk, and knowing how, you know, the mics, you know, he brought in a lot of his own mics and outboard gear, and, you know, this sound that he was able to get, you know, it was just incredible. So that was, you know, most of the stuff on there we kind of wrote as we went, but I would, yeah.
So the second track is not the first track that I said. The second track, New Morning, that's got this kind of Beatlesque sort of really nice sort of main sort of melodic idea. And then again, it kind of, for me, that one also has a bit of a Hendrix influence on the solo. And you got some really nice slide. Did you play slide? You're playing slide, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, play slide on that.
It's really nice.
That was on Paul's, you know, I mean, I've got quite a few guitars, but Paul's, like I said, he's got loads. So he brought down, I think it's a 68 Les Paul custom, black one with three, I think it's got 3 pickups. Maybe it's just got 2. But it's, amazing guitar. So that was an overdub, the slide part. We sort of did the album in 2 halves. The first bit was recorded back in sort of February or March 2018. Then I was just busy sort of touring and doing things with people. And then it wasn't until last year when COVID hit that we kind of had time to kind of finish it all. So the second sessions were sort of overdubbing keyboards and the odd solo or the odd sort of melody, because I think although we wanted it to be jammed and loose and free, it also needs a focus as well. If it's just a half an hour jam, I think it gets a bit like
and these are real. Yeah, these are really definite songs. There's lots of, for example, there's the next song, Zapruder. Is that a name you've taken off the Zapruder film, JFK?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's just a little. When I'm bored or can't sleep or something, I seem to go into these like documentaries about.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's right.
JFK thing. And there's some really good stuff. But I was always fascinated. From a kid, I remember hearing that. I think my dad had something, and he used to say that, you know, Abraham Zapruder, the guy who filmed it, and just an amazing that word or that name just stuck with me.
Yeah, and that track, Zapruder, it's got a very kind of sort of American crime soundtrack vibe to it.
Oh, cool.
Does that makes sense?
Oh, great. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That it kind of fit for me anyway. When I'm, you know,
those crime sort of, you know, films or series in America in the 70s. Kind of reminded me of something like that.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, that song came about previous to the recording. I've sort of forgotten about this actually, but we did a round at Rocco's house, the bass player, Rocco Palladino. There's a studio there. Like I think it's his dad's sort of old studio, and occasionally we sort of go around there and have a jam or just meet up or whatever. And me, Jeremy, the drummer, Ben, he plays a lot of rhythm guitar on the album. We just met up and we went around there, and some of these ideas stemmed from a jam we had at Rocco's place. So Zapruder was one of those, and it was kind of like 3 sections of a song. There was a sort of the kind of verse bit, then there was like a chorus bit, and then it was like these 3 different, and it kind of just went between the 3. So when we and that's kind of how that song came to be. But then we'd be jamming and then stop and what about this riff here, you know, and we sort of played this kind of rocky riff at the end, and it's like let's go into that. So in the studio it's kind of slightly edited so you can't hear us talking, but there was a moment where they're like, what, do it now, 1 2 3 4, you know.
Yeah, because it had a nice. I think it was around the 4 minute 30. Had this nice change.
Oh yeah, but it's
You
just a lot of these songs are a kind of a canvas to play over. You know, I mean, it's all very selfish for me because I just want to play with great people and just solo and like just enjoy it. But trying to make something that's kind of cool.
mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't want it to be a nerdy guitar album. I didn't
No,
want it to be.
it's a real mature statement. You know, I think personally that's what and it's not one of those sort of shredding Guitar Hero things. It's actually, you know, and the grooves are amazing. The grooves really, really are. I was thinking, you know, the guy that used to play with Bill Withers, you know.
Oh yeah,
you know,
James Gadsden.
Yeah, it had. I was like, he's playing drums for you. It's like whoever that drummer is. So,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
So the next song, just to go through these because these are fantastic songs. Fego.
Yeah, Figo.
The 3/4 is it in three? It's like a 1, 2, 3 thing. In blues, but that actually made me think of Ronnie Earl. I don't know why. Ronnie, you know Ronnie Earl. Obviously,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
vibe, you know.
Yeah, I was kind of as a sort of. He was trying to do like a slow blues without it being a 12-bar slow blues. You know what I mean? Like something. So I mean, I'm really into Dylan, and for me, that kind of has a slight. There's an album of Dylan's called "Time Out of Mind," and there's some sort of jams on there or songs rather that they're not in a rush to get anywhere. There's space and there's, you know, I love that. There's something I sort of love more and more as I get older is songs. And there's an artist I really like called Kurt Vile, kind of like an indie guy from the States, and there's just so much space in his music. Nothing's in a rush. It sounds really off the cuff, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're in the studio, you sort of, you know, you're paying for studio time and you
Panic.
kind of panic, you get quite nervous. Right, we've got to get it, and like I've got to say everything I needed to say ever in this one solo, and just trying to get away from that and just be like, fuck it. It just is what comes out, and it's got space and it breathes, and that was kind of the idea with Figo, was to do like a slow blues that was kind of emotional without it being, like I said, like just a guitar fest. You know, I mean, there's a Donny Hathaway track. I'm not comparing it to Donny Hathaway because I wouldn't ever do that. But there's a Donny Hathaway track called I think it's "I Love You More Than You'll Ever Know," and there's a live version of it. There's Cornell Dupree and Willie Weeks, and you know, it just this kind of 6/8, you know, and it's kind of sparse, and the guitar playing so cool, and this sort of, you know, and I kind of wanted it to almost have a bit of that feel, like you're in a little club somewhere and there's this sort of band playing, and so it's, and it,
beautiful playing, man, beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And then you go from there. You go to Angerstein Road, which is kind of like this John Lee Hooker, you know, sort of very Mississippi sort of blues sort of riff. Maybe even Lightning Hopkins influence there.
Yeah, definitely. Again, it was to just have a break from all the guitar, you know, big drums, big guitar, rock sort of stuff. And Paul, the producer, wanted to just capture something that was just a little moment away from that, like back to kind of like basic, and keep the blues element in there. So yeah, that was a little thing. I love hearing Lightning Hopkins play, you know, where he just kind of keeps his thumb going, and I forget the name of the art. I think it's Little Son Jackson who does I Travel Alone, or Traveling Alone, and it's this really kind of haunting sort of thing where you know, just like one man and a guitar, I think, and also Jimmy Vaughan's interpretation of some of that stuff, like Six Strings Down, and what's that song on? I think it's called like Duende Back Porch Blues or something on Strange Pleasure, where he's just sort of got this sort of slightly odd melody, but the you know, his thumb's kind of going the whole time. And yeah, so I kind of wanted to get back to you know, that
it's a
world.
nice kind of sort of kind of interval, like sort of like break between the two. Sort of, it's almost like an interlude sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was the idea. Yeah, just a moment of it.
Yeah,
Just a
it's
moment.
nice.
Yeah.
And then you've got this. This is really interesting because I wanted to ask you about effects. Actually,
Uh-huh.
we can go nerdy on this next
Yeah,
one.
sure.
Third eyewitness, and again, killer groove. Uh, and then you've got some vocals because I'm wondering, is that you singing or is that somebody else singing?
This is Gavin Condor,
Right.
who I mentioned earlier, who I've done lots of things with over the last few years, but he's an incredible vocalist. His wife is as well, actually, Jess. They've got a group called the Condors. But yeah, Gav came down, and this was the one thing that was actually more written. So I had this idea with a drum groove, the verse and the chorus, and I think we played it through 2 or 3 times, and I think this was the 3rd take. And that's Gav singing live with us as we jammed. So he basically invented that song on the spot as we played, which is again, like, I think one of, like, I'm quite whatever the word is, spontaneous with playing. Like, I play better if I don't think about it, and it's like the 1st or 2nd take sort of thing. Gav's like that as a vocalist. He can just come out with something in that moment because he's feeling it, you know, and it all feels right. Whereas it probably, if he was to think about it too much, or if I was to think about what I was playing too much, it wouldn't have the same sort of feel, you know. So that track, which is actually the first single that we've released, is it almost, I don't know, the chorus and stuff is almost a bit indie, I would say. It kind of goes, which I really like, because again, on a guitar record, it's just nice to have something that's I don't know, I just think it's really cool. I love what Gav did on it and what everyone's playing, you know.
Yeah, and talking about your guitar solo, do you remember you were telling in the beginning of the interview, you were saying how sometimes you play something and it sounds like it's going to collapse, but then you bring it back.
Yeah.
And that had a bit of that.
Cool.
To it, and where you're playing around with the time, you know.
Yeah, that was actually a mistake. One of those.
What was it? Sorry.
Because I sort of did
but
a
it
bit.
Sounded amazing. It sounded incredible. I loved it. You know.
Because I said to Paul that we should probably fix that, because it was a sort of licking it. I was kind of hitting the guitar with my thumb, like probably looks really stupid, but like a slap bass player or something. Again, being a frustrated drummer, just trying to be percussive. And I had this kind of Octavia effect on, and I was kind of going like digga 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 digga, and I kind of fucked it up, so it went did it kind of
no,
like,
it sounded right. I thought this guy's a genius with the time, you know.
Yeah,
and so no, and you were using on Octavia. I thought that I'd actually I had that in my mind. That was this. What was your effects? What kind of effects did you go to the studio with?
On the initial sessions, I had my fuzz pedal, I had a Strymon timeline, an Octavia. There's kind of like the few things that I always like, I guess, are sort of loosely based on, you know, some of the Hendrix pedals. So I always like having fuzz, Univibe, Octavia, a wah-wah. That's kind of like as a basic thing, my kind of go-to.
So you take that with you everywhere. Those
pretty much, yeah. I mean, if I'm doing my stuff, if I'm doing a session with someone, I mean, Tom, really, you don't need many pedals, you know, like a tremolo and a tuner, you can probably get away with. But so I've done stuff with other people where you need a lot of different sounds or a lot of program delays that are in time with the click, and I kind of get a buzz out of all of that stuff. But yeah, for the album, it was, I think the only thing sort of different I had on there was the Strymon timeline, which on that particular song, Third Eyewitness, in the second verse, for some reason my timeline went through a phase of it would just come on and you couldn't turn it off. and the trail would just go on forever. So on that song, I accidentally hit there was like I think if you press like both buttons by accident or something, it would sort of
it jumps up. It jumps to the next preset.
Yeah. So like I pressed something by accident, and it just went. Ding.
Oh wow!
I was like, I can't turn it off, and we left it in, and luckily it was in the right. It was the right. The note that it hit was right. But yeah, not that many effects on the initial. Most of what you're hearing are those initial sessions at Rack, but on Third Eyewitness, the solo was something we did as an overdub, and that was the new. It's a bit of a long story, but I do the SMFuzz, which is like a Germanium fuzz pedal under my name.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. The SMFuzz.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, the SMFuzz came to be in about 2011, which was based off. I made a pedal. I don't know if you've ever done this. You probably have, but I made a fuzz pedal. Probably when I was about 18. From just, I went to like Maplin's. Do you remember?
Yeah, Maplin's.
It was great. It's so annoying. Maplin's doesn't
exist, isn't it? Yeah, they're gone.
And you could get everything there that you needed to make a fuzz pedal, apart from the transistors, the Germanium transistors. But yeah, I found this schematic online, and I went and got all the stuff, and I built this pedal, and I got hold of some Germanium transistors, and it worked. So I used that pedal on my first album, Can't Take Any More, second album.
Wow.
And I had it on my board for years, and because it was really badly made, occasionally, quite often it wouldn't work. So like you'd be doing a gig and it was like.
And did you A/B that pedal with other sort of what I'd call professionally made, if I dare?
Fuzz pedals, yeah.
And it always won, did it?
It always won. It for some reason it just sounded really good. I don't know why. Maybe there was like the wrong value, something or other in there. I had a fuzz pedal because my dad knew Ivor Arbiter. When I was a kid and I met Ivor, he gave me a fuzz face, like one of his reissue ones. So I've got he wrote a message on there to me. So I always had that, which sounds great as well. I mean, the thing with fuzz pedals is they vary, particularly the Germanium ones, they vary a lot. Anyway, I used to use this pedal all the time, and it was painted red, and then the red came off, and it was just like on my board. And quite often I'd do a gig and someone would say, "Oh, what's that pedal you got there?" And I'd be like, it was one I made. And sometimes like Joe Bonamassa saw it and he was like, "Oh, it sounds great, man. Can you make me one?" Wow. And I tried to make, like sit there and sort of do all the same stuff and solder and stuff. And I was just terrible at soldering. Like I just couldn't, just couldn't get it together. And it kind of went on like that. And when I was in London, when I moved to London, I met a friend of mine, a guy called Luke Higgins, who's a guitarist and singer, and he was like, "Oh man, like I love that pedal. Can you make me one again?" And I was like, "Sorry, mate, I'm not very good at that." And he was like, "Well, my uncle is an electronics engineer. Maybe he could, have a look and make me one." And so we went over to his uncle's house in Cranley, and his uncle's like this kind of like old electronics kind of geek. and he basically, we got chatting, and he was like, "Oh, I could maybe improve this, or we could do that, or whatever." And we had this sort of idea that, like, well, why don't we make 10 and try and flog them to friends, and give them to people. So we made 10, and it went down really well. Then we made 20 or something, then we made 50, then we made 100, then we made like 500 in total or something from that first batch. And then it was really successful, but life just kind of got in the way. Like I got busy playing with Tom, and Luke was busy doing gigs, and it takes quite a lot of work to make them, and to build, the guy who builds them, and to get all the parts and test everyone and source the Germanium transistors. It's quite a lot of manpower just to make, if you're going to make 100 pedals, it's quite a lot of quite a lot of energy to make that happen. So we just kind of let it go, slightly frustratingly, really, because we did want to keep making them. But in that time, we stopped in about 20, 2014, I think 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Like last year, a few people would send me like, there was like one for sale on Reverb, and it was like 700 quid.
Wow.
For like one of these pedals.
Give us some money.
Yeah, and then there was another one for like 600 quid, and I'm sort of sitting there thinking,
go to Maplin's quickly.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's gone.
It's shut down. And me and Luke were like, well, we should really try and work out a way of making these again, because in this current climate where gigs aren't happening and touring and stuff, plus it's just a cool pedal. I mean, we haven't reinvented the wheel, but we source all the transistors and we test them all, and there's something in the circuit. I'm not technical in that way, but
when he examined your original pedal, did he say, wow, this is
exactly, yeah. So the value of the capacitors is the same, and the value of the transistors, they've got to be two different values within a certain range to create the right amount of fuzz, which is based on my old pedal. And there's also something in there that helps with when fuzz pedals get hot, they don't perform in the same way. So I think he's put something in to compensate that. And it's been great. So yeah, we because we had time last year, we were able to get the company going and get another batch out there, and we sold out like almost overnight, which was incredible. And what I was going to say is the solo on that song, I've teamed up with a pedal builder called BG Harding. His name's Chris, and I wanted to design one pedal. Like I said, I always like to have an Octavia and a fuzz. One pedal that did both independently of each other. So it's a slightly different fuzz circuit. It's like a silicon fuzz in this one. So it's got a slightly kind of woollier sound, but I use that the new pedal, which isn't out yet. The new fuzz, I use that on this solo, the Octavia on it.
So on that track is a kind of prototype to this new pedal that's coming out. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
it sounded amazing. It sounded really amazing.
Thank you.
I was just like, and the tones. I've got to say, guys, this album sounds incredible. The guitar tones are amazing. So what about the amp and the guitar that you used?
So mostly it's my 62 Strat, which is all original, apart from things that wear out like frets and stuff, but I've got all the original parts for it. I used my Vibreverb, and I used the 2 Rock, I think it's the classic reverb. Classic reverb. I think the main session was through a 3x10 or 4x10 cab that a friend of mine had. It's like a sort of it looks like a Dumble cab, but I think it was built in Japan, and he lent me that for the session. So the 2 Rock was going through that, the Vibreverb, and a little Gibson amp, which is, I think it's called like a Les Paul Junior Gibson amp, but it's from the 50s and it's tiny, but we had that mic'd up as well. So most of the tones you hear are a mixture of either all 3 of those amps or one of them slightly more predominantly than the others.
So you're plugged into all 3 at the same time. They're all blasting at the same time.
Yeah, we built like a little den with some foam around it to kind of separate it, even though we were all in the same room live, to separate it a little bit. But I think one of the reasons the guitars sound the way they do on the record is because, obviously because of what Paul did miking up wise, but because the room mics are capturing everything, and the drum mics are near the guitar amps, so all the drum mics get a bit of guitar on them. So
it's got an incredible sound. It's got.
Thank you. Yeah.
This is, in a way, I kind of compare this to one of my favorite albums, Mambo Sinuendo, which is a Raikuda album he made in Cuba with a Cuban guitarist called Manuel Galban, and that was essentially the same sort of setup you've got, and that was an instrumental album as well. Although you've got a few vocal songs, but your album it's got this incredible studio, so not only guitar sound but also studio room sound to it. It's got a beautiful sound.
Wow! Well, I mean, that'll be what Paul did, at the time of engineering, with his mics and his knowledge of, engineering is an art that it's almost like it's so hard to know how to capture something and get a sound. But when you work with someone who spent their life trying to work out how to get drum sounds and guitar sounds and room sounds and what mics work in certain positions and the phase and what that's going through on the way in, he brought his own like preamps and outboard gear. So, he'd have for instance, the guitars would go through a certain preamp set to how he likes it and with a certain mic on it. And yeah, he's done an amazing job. I mean, I feel like when you listen to it, it feels kind of like you're in the room with it.
Yeah, it's a very three-dimensional sound.
Oh, great. Yeah. And then Paul mixed it as well. So seeing that's been, his vision of how he wanted it to sound. And again, Paul doesn't like things that are neat and tidy. Although to me, it's got the things that are neat and tidy about it are the production and the not neat and tidy, but there's a classiness to the way Paul's recorded it that gives it a kind of high def feeling, but the playing and the vibe is not clean and tidy. Do you know what I mean? It's not like tight. It's tight because it's
not like a Phil Collins album.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like we went in and like replaced loads of stuff and moved things. It's like what you hear is what we played, and we only played it once or twice.
And that's a magic that you can't really replicate with overdubs and this and that, and cutting and pasting and So tell us. So it's a fantastic album, guys. I suggest you if you buy one album this year in 2021, get this album. Get this album because it is the most amazing, guitar playing you're going to hear in 2021. So Scott, what other guitars are you using? Is it just a Strat? Are you a Stratocaster guy?
Yeah. I mean, my old 62 is hard to beat. It's I played a lot of Strats, and that maybe it's because I've had it for so long. I've had it since I was 12, and it's woody, it's big. Like I was saying with Jeremy, giving you that push behind you, it feels like that with my Strat. When I play my Strat, it never lets me down. It's like it helps you play. It gives you an extra kick up the arse, So that's on most of the tracks. On quite a lot of the tracks, on Zapruder, I'm playing Paul Stacy's. It's a copy of a Gibson Les Paul made by a guy called Terry Morgan, I think. I don't know if you've heard of it. I think he just passed away.
Yeah, sadly he did. But I played a few of them actually. I played quite a few of them.
Oh, cool.
His guitars, over the years. Yeah. I mean, some people say they are the next best thing to the real thing,
Yeah. I think they're worth quite a bit of money now as well. Yeah. That was that. That's what I used on Zapruder, and I think I used that on Everything Is Nothing. And yeah, it's just kind of got that great kind of woody Les Paul sound. Like a good Les. I was again not comparing myself or anything, but like when you hear Kossoff or that kind of, it's got like a woody.
Absolutely, real woody sort of.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
And I think that guitar has that bit. So I use that on quite a few tracks, and in the studio, I actually quite enjoy not playing a Strat because it makes me play differently, slightly different color, and you can't dig in the same way when you're playing a Les Paul. When I play a Strat, it's very comfortable, and it kind of puts me back into all the things I grew up that I love, like Hendrix and Stevie Ray and stuff like that, which I love. But I have to stop listening to it because otherwise I just want to play like that. So playing a different guitar is quite a quick way of sounding a little different to how you normally sound, because
absolutely agree.
It just totally, even though it might feel a little bit uncomfortable, sometimes that uncomfortableness, it just is what you need to be out of your comfort zone a little bit. And for me, playing a Strat is great live, and I love, it's my go-to thing. It always records well and it always sounds great, but it just sometimes I have to force myself to just play something different. Just to take my thought process.
I saw you on video playing a beautiful Telecaster. I think it was do you own a Telecaster? Do you own like a maple neck?
Yeah, I've got a pink one with echoes. Yeah,
I mean that sounded really nice.
Oh, cool!
Sounded really, and I love your playing on that one. That's.
Thanks. Yeah, that guitar always. Yeah, it just makes me play a bit differently. That guitar's got quite a chunky neck on it, and the way it's set up at the moment is quite a low action. So I always find for like certain kind of funky sort of things, that guitar kind of feels more at home on that guitar. It's kind of a bit more spanky, the sound. But yeah, mostly the Strat. I think I use the Jaguar. I've got an old 60s 65 Fender Jag that I use on Figo, which is it's quite a Strat-like tone, but slightly different. One of the things on that track that was a bit of a nightmare afterwards was the switch on my Jag is really loud, and I didn't realize I did it so much, but I changed pickup selector all the time. It's almost like
I do that on my guitar guitar. I know what you mean, yeah. And that's like a Jaguar. That's
cool.
You're playing, and then it all of a sudden goes to an out of phase sound. It's like what?
Yeah, I actually changed the switches on thinking about it, because normally on a Jag there's like the 3 switches on the bottom of the pick guard, but I changed it to like this Johnny Marr. I think it's Johnny Marr switch that he has. Right. It's so loud. It's like, because we had all the room mics and everything going, it was coming through on like the mics, but I mean, we didn't realize at the time that obviously when you start compressing things and mixing and stuff, so there'd be this really like quiet, sensitive moment with like clack. And so some of them sort of worked because they were in time and they sound like I don't know, percussion or something. But yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare for Paul afterwards trying to like mute these little things. But yeah, the Jag's cool, but it's a weird guitar to solo on. I think something about the scale length and the
it's a smaller scale length, isn't it? A shorter scale length.
Yeah. And the way the strings come over the bridge, they're not at a very steep angle. Like so on a Strat or a Tele or something, through the body, you've got this, but on a Jag, they're kind of it's much softer, so you're sort of at risk all the time of like the bending and stuff. Just feels that the string tension is different.
What string gauge do you use generally? What's your kind of go-to?
Just tens, really. Tens. Yeah, tens of my Strat. When I used to use heavier strings.
Did you use the tune to E flat? Like, on your first album, was that in E flat?
E flat, yeah. Again, from the Hendrix sort of Stevie Ray thing, I always used to play in E flat, and it makes quite a difference. 13 for some reason on my old Strat as well, the strings always feel about the same. I don't know why that is, but even when at one point I used to buy singles, single guitar strings from a guitar shop, and I think sometimes just to impress them, I'd be like, yeah, can I get like a 14 I don't know, whatever it is, 19, and just get really heavy strings. But I used to use like I think 12s or 13s, but when you're in standard and you've got 10s, that tends to fit about right to me. But sometimes they can feel too light as well. When you're like mid-flow on a gig and you're playing in anger, sometimes 10s can feel a bit like elasticy.
Yeah, or the adrenaline, and you become superhuman, and
yeah. Sometimes it's like you almost need a bit more resistance when you're really going for it. So I don't know. I haven't done when doing session gigs and stuff. I don't find myself playing in that way a lot of the time, because you're kind of more reserved, and the moments you do get tend to be slightly sort of more controlled. But if I haven't done a run of my own gigs for a very long time, so I'd be interested to see if I had like a run of 10 gigs doing my own stuff, where you're playing like the stuff on the album. I think I probably would end up wanting to use heavier strings.
And so, really nerdy question: plectrums. What
picks,
plectrum? What picks do you use?
Well, I really like. I've always used just like the classic Fender ones, like the classic celluloid ones.
And would they be heavy or medium or?
Well, I've just started using medium ones.
That's what George Benson uses.
Really?
Yeah, Fender mediums.
For me, I really like it because I used to use extra heavy and then like last year, I think I got some that they were sort of the wrong gauge, but I just ended up using them because I had them and I really liked it because just having a bit of like movement in the pick as you're playing, it sort of makes it easier somehow. If the pick's like sort of too rigid, it almost feels like you're losing a bit of something, like especially if you're trying to play fast or something. So yeah, I really like just the classic celluloid, but I do use them backwards. So rather, I don't even see that, but rather than I do play like that sometimes, like for chords and certain rhythm things, but quite often I'll just use it that way around with the sort of fat end on the side.
That's because I think Steve Ray Vaughan and I think Robin Ford also uses it that way as well.
Right. Yeah,
Robin
I think
Ford
so. I mean, I guess you've got less when it's like that. You've sort of got less of the sharp end, but then certain licks or certain phrases, I'll sort of turn the pick around. Then it's quite nice to kind of have that. That extra. Yeah, it's a bit nerdy, isn't it? But kind of like going between using.
Yeah, because you use your fingers as well, don't you? When you play,
like using your fingers for a moment and then sort of getting the pick and kind of going between the two and using a lot of simple things when you're playing can make a big difference to the sound. So just where you play with your right hand, if you're near the bridge or if you're playing sort of over the fretboard, it's such a different tone. Just in that small area from where the neck starts to where the bridge is, you can get lots of different sounds, let alone changing pickups or even an upstroke. I mean, Doyle being left-handed and playing upside down, he uses a lot of upstrokes, and
I could actually hear that on the I think it was the track with the Octavia, maybe, or the first track even. I could almost hear you picking upwards. Is that right?
I do that all the time. I think from seeing someone, I think it's from seeing Doyle do it. I kind of liked it. Has a different sound, and obviously you're hitting the top strings first. So if you're playing like a chord and you just want to stab, that's got a kind of harder sound to it than if you brush down, and also you're hearing those top strings more predominantly. So I like mixing it up and playing something just to try at home as well as when you're fiddling around, but just the attack and the sound of an upstroke versus a downstroke, it's quite a big difference, so depending on
like the fuzz and the effects are gonna work differently, aren't they, as well, because it's different.
Totally. I mean, I think a lot of people with something like a fuzz pedal, they put it on and they, again, like changing guitars, changing pedals, just changes how you play. You don't, if you're using something like a tube scream or an overdrive pedal, you can't play in the same way. That inspires you to play in a different way to when you use a fuzz pedal. With a fuzz pedal, certain notes sustain more and you can leave things hanging and overlap and almost play softer with a fuzz pedal than if you're playing with an overdrive, like a tube scream style pedal. With a tube scream, you can dig in more and you can, you've got to work more for that note to kind of sustain. Whereas, and then something like an octave pedal, that it's almost like gated. The note kind of dies off after a certain point. So you have this very direct, like clavinet sort of sound that sort of it's very percussive. So I think just using all that, I quite often see people and they're like, oh, I don't like fuzz pedals, or sometimes chatting to other players, and I think it's how you use it, because you can also just use a fuzz as if you turn with a germanium fuzz, you can turn the guitar volume down and it becomes more of a clean overdrive boost or a treble boost sort of thing.
Well, I've got to confess that I've only discovered the fuzz myself in like the last 2 years. I never
really?
used the fuzz before 2 years ago.
Wow.
I love it.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, you can go full like woolly fuzz as well,
Yeah.
of course, you know, if you want to do that. But I think just because some people are almost like, they'll just try and play like chords with the fuzz full, which you can do, but it doesn't have to be that. It can.
I'm one of those guys. I'm still on
Right.
the novelties stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no. I mean, yeah, it's, you know, if you, I guess, because what you're a master at for me is using the fuzz and the Octavia and all those effects together. You know, and you weave in and out of those effects, and you know, it's all different colors that you're bringing in. That's I think you're really amazing at doing that. You know.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Well, I mean, yeah, that's exactly how I see it. Different colors, and you even just within one lick or one run or a bend, you can just put a pedal on, and it can add to it, or you can take away, or you can, you know, it's like just all these different little sounds. You know, you don't have to just have one pedal on and use it in the same way. You can add to that with, you know, 2 or 3 different patterns, go crazy. I mean, sometimes because I can't play, I'd love to be able to play outside more, like Wayne Krantz or something. Sometimes I can't do that in the way that I want to, but a way of kind of me kind of getting around that is to put on a load of pedals that kind of sound a bit odd.
There was a moment, come back to the, you know, the Fight No More, there was actually a point where someone was going outside. I don't know if it was you or the bass player, but there was definitely a point in that where it was a little bit outside.
Oh, cool.
Solo. And I thought, yeah, man, that's pretty
Yeah. Hip. I mean, sometimes for me, I wish I understood how the theory side of that more, but sometimes I can hear it, and on a good night or a good moment, I can kind of go there. But it's not schooled in that way. I can't go, I'm going to play a run that's like, you know, I can't play that or read it or talk about or know what it is, but I can hear it, and kind of like if I'm feeling it, I can kind of go to that place.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I love John.
Like, whoa, that's a bit tasty.
Oh, cool. I love John Schofield. I mean, I saw him at the Blue Note in New York, probably like 3 years ago, maybe. And it was just amazing. Like just the way he was able to just go anywhere he wanted. And he'd go, I mean, I videoed some of it, and almost brings you to tears, because he goes off on this journey. You know, the song he was playing, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like just 2 chords, the backing. It's like a country theme, sort of G to C kind of ding, ding, ding. He went off on this solo, and over those 2 chords, he hinted at so many different things. Every one of the riffs he played was like a song in its own right, and it was just a throwaway lick.
Yeah,
but
the guy's a genius, absolute genius.
It was incredible, and he's just throwing these out there, like, you know, have that, you can take that, that's just nothing. But any one of those little things would have been enough. You could have embellished that one lick and played that
for the next 10 years.
Yeah, totally.
Bill Frisell is kind of similar in a more understated sort of way, isn't he? He can do the same thing, just take a Beatles song and then just, you know.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Actually, rhythmically as well, Schofield, his timing is sort of makes me laugh. The way he kind of, I don't always like comedy and music, but there's something about when Schofield plays that kind of makes you laugh. You know,
it's him straight away, because he plays near the bridge, doesn't he? Just that, you know, it's John Schofield. Yeah,
instantly recognisable. Yeah. And as soon as you try and play like that, someone goes, "Oh, you're trying to sound like John Schofield."
Yeah, it's kind of untouchable. It's like you can't. Yeah. So just to wrap up here, it's been an amazing interview. And what about practicing? How do you keep in shape guitar-wise? Or do you prefer just to leave the guitar alone for a little while in this lockdown sort of period?
Yeah, I go through stages. So I sort of have these moments of extreme. So sometimes when you get a new guitar or a new bit of gear, new amp or something, that can inspire you to sort of go down a certain route for a while, or I hear a record or an album or a song or a solo, and I'll be like, I want to do that. So I'll spend like 2 weeks playing a lot, learning about that style or something. But I've always sort of felt this way. I try not to think of it as practice, because if I sit there like learning licks, when I do a gig, I just play those licks, and I hate hearing that back, because it sounds too rehearsed or too, if I learn a little outside lick and then I copy and paste it and put it in on a gig, it just does nothing for me. It's nothing as well. I've just played a lick that I've learned. Yeah. That doesn't move me. What moves me is almost having like this naive, childlike approach to guitar and music. And when you play, it's like you just have fun with it and jump off the cliff and see what happens and see where you end up. And you invent things that way. I find, not always. It's, you do have stock things that you go back to and kind of get out of jail free cards of, I'll play a rhythmical thing for 20 seconds, the same lick until I can kind of like find something inspiring to play. But I try not to think of it as practice, but things that doing session stuff forces me into a position where I have to learn other styles and other songs and other chords and other types of music, which is kind of like been a good practice for me to be able to know more about chords and a little bit about harmony and open tunings and stuff, which I probably wouldn't have found out on my own. Like, I'm quite lazy in that way. I need to be forced to kind of practice or have a reason to. Like, if there was a gig tomorrow and it was like, you've got to learn this number that's got loads of chords and it's in a weird time signature or something, I'd get it down, but it would stress me out and I'd have to sit and learn it. And but in the type of guitar playing I like as well, whether it's like Jimmy Vaughan or Albert King or Hendrix or Lightning Hopkins and stuff, to me doesn't sound practiced. It doesn't sound like they're sitting there, even though they're technically what they're doing, no one else can do. But it never sounds worked out. No. And I think if I could as well, maybe I would, like when I love Robin Ford's playing, and when I hear him play those melodies, I love that album Tiger Walk, and when he's playing like the heads of the songs. It's
really funny because I was actually, there's the track, very quickly, I actually thought that Zapruder had a bit of quite a lot of a Robin Ford vibe to it.
Oh, great. Yeah, I love Robin Ford. I love that album. But he's so great at playing those technical melodies and very musical guitar, but it doesn't sound rehearsed. It still sounds sort of like he's spare of the moment with it.
Well, it's interesting what you say, because all those guitarists that you've mentioned and other players, from Jimmy Page and as diverse as Pat Metheny, they all say that they don't touch the guitar. When they come back off tour, they just leave the guitar for 6 weeks and don't even look at it, And I think maybe it's necessary. Maybe we need a break every now and then.
I mean, definitely when you gig a lot, that makes you stronger, which I'm kind of missing at the moment. I don't feel like I'm, just for the fact that I haven't done a gig in a year or something. When you're playing lots and doing lots of gigs night after night, you build up a strength in your hands, which can be very powerful. And you just feel confident, I think, when you're playing a lot, which is something that is kind of a weird feeling probably for a lot of people at the moment, where we're not gigging and you're not interacting with an audience. I mean, there's no greater, for me, I always need to have an audience there or something to make me play. If I'm just left to my own devices,
we do it for the applause.
Yeah, I need like, quite often, like in rehearsals, I'm terrible. Sound check's not very good. Just can't play. Haven't really got the energy. I'm a bit worried about the gig. I don't know that song. And then the gig comes, and it's like, let's have it. And you just kind of get into that mode where you're like, fuck it, and you just play things that you didn't even know you could play.
Yes.
But I also quite enjoy that. I like having a bit of a reserve. like if I go into a guitar shop, I won't play that much because number one, it's just a bit embarrassing going in a guitar shop and what are you going to play? Like, impress me. It's like, I've got nothing. So I hate those environments.
Yes.
But I like I said,
guitar show would be your worst nightmare, right?
oh God, yeah. I just can't play. I'm just not like, it's not inspiring. Like for me to, I think you need an audience and you need people around you that are inspiring you to play, whether, you know, or the song or the music or, you know, the bass player, the drummer, whoever's like kind of listening and reacting to what you're doing and you're doing the same with them. That's inspiring. And that's when you play stuff that you didn't think of, you know.
Yeah. Because it's a weird thing, the whole guitar world, because it can be, I mean, if you compare it to like the saxophone world or the trumpet world, it's very different.
Yeah. I think with guitar as well, like I'm always amazed, like when you play a song on guitar, like let's say you've got to learn a, you know, I'm trying to think of like a famous song, like an Al Green song or something. You can weave in and out. You don't always have to be a dominant force on guitar, especially with rhythm playing. Whereas if you're a bass player or drummer, there can't be any hesitation. No. You have to play that note. And you got to be honest. Same with drums. They can't really hesitate with drums. But guitar, there's much more scope for like weaving in and out and around and not playing for a moment and then kind of doing a little thing.
And as you know, like when you get given a chart, it's normally it's the one instrument that they don't put any notes for is guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone else has got dots except the guitarist.
Yeah, there's a lot of room and there's so many, guitar is such a big, broad sort of palette of, you know, like I guess every instrument is really, but yeah, I don't know. I always find that amazing because even when I know a song well, if I've learnt a song, I still find myself thinking, I'm glad I'm not playing drums or I'm not leading. It depends on the song. Sometimes you have to lead it, but I like being able to sort of weave in and out a bit and kind of play with the time and play with, you know, where you place things and stuff, which but yeah, I feel guilty that I don't practice more. Definitely, I feel like this like at the moment I sort of I'm kind of doing lots of music things and I've been sorting out my album and pedals and stuff, but actually just sitting and playing, I feel like I'm not doing enough of it. So do you get that, like the sort of guilt of
trust me, I've looked back at this lockdown period and just think I've completely wasted. I've done nothing. I've done less than I normally do.
Really?
It's a complete waste of time. Yeah. At least you've got an album out and a pedal. I haven't done anything.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I love watching Netflix and just chilling. Yeah, I love doing nothing. Like my ideal, as soon as I have something to do, it's like if I knew I had something next Sunday, the week leading up to it would be almost ruined because I'd be worrying about the thing on the Sunday. Yeah. And as soon as that thing on the Sunday is finished, that's like, I just love having nothing in the diary. But then like a day into that, I'm anxious because I haven't got anything on. Yeah. it's a no-win.
Yeah. And are you doing any sessions like remote sessions? Any studio sessions remotely?
I did a few. I've actually last week I just did I play with John Ilsley from Dire Straits. He's a bass player for Dire Straits and he's doing a new album. Sorry, cough. And so we've been recording that. I'm playing some guitar on that, which is the first studio thing I've done in a little while. I mean, I've did quite a few like kind of lockdown videos and, you know, remote things at home, but it's a different, you know, and I do that in general, you know, like put guitar on things for people, but it's hard work doing it on your own at home because again, even if you're in the studio putting guitar on someone's song, at least you've got a relationship with the producer or the artist and you know what they want and you can play something and you can tailor it to, you know, even just judging by their reaction on their face as to whether or not it's any good. But when you do something remotely, it can work but you play guitar and then it takes them a while to listen to it and then they might come back, by which time you've changed your guitar sound and you can't get that sound that you had on the thing. And I find it can be like quite an uninspiring environment, just sitting there on your own trying to come up with a guitar part or play something, depending on the music and depending on who you're working with. But sometimes it's just, I mean, we all just, it's so much more fun when you're in a studio and you can just,
you bounce off the chemistry,
bounce off people and, you know, take the piss out of people and, you know.
So, Scott, thanks a million. Then it's going to be amazing having, you know, all you guys watching Scott. Make sure you get his album. It's an incredible album. You need to buy it. And also, I know for all you pedal lovers out there, you need to buy his Fuzz pedal, the SMFuzz. And how can they get the Fuzz and the album, Scott?
So the Fuzz is available at smfuzz.com. And the new pedal, the new Octave Fuzz, is launching very soon. So keep an eye on that. And my the album's out on April the 23rd, and that's available from my website, which is scottmckeon.co.uk, or my Bandcamp page, which scottmckeon.bandcamp, I think it is. So
I'll put links on the video as well for those who check you out. You know.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant, and thanks for being on the Guitar Show. Thank you very much.
Cheers.